The Meccan Illuminations, also known as the Meccan Revelations, by Muhi-e-Din Ibn Arabi. Translation by Muhammad Al-Amrani. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. A chapter on the table of contents of the book, not reckoned among the main chapters, and it comprises 6 sections, 58. The first section concerning the divine cognitions. Chapter 1. On the discernment of the Spirit, from whose unfolding genesis I have drawn what I inscribed in this book, and concerning the secrets that lay between us. Chapter 2. On the discernment of the ranks of letters and vocalizations within the cosmos, and their relation to the most beautiful names, 7-1-180, 17-110, and the discernment of words that might imply anthropomorphism, as well as the discernment of divine knowledge, the knower, and the various sciences. Chapter 3. On the transcendence of the truth above any semblance of anthropomorphism or corporealization implied by words uttered upon him in his scriptures and upon the tongue of his messenger. Peace be upon him. Chapter 4. On the cause of the cosmos's insufflation and its genesis, and the stations of the most beautiful names within the world. Chapter 5. On the discernment of the secrets of In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. For a particular perspective, and not from all its multifaceted dimensions. The 6th chapter, on the discernment of the genesis of spiritual creation, and who was the foremost existence within it, and who found, and in what was it found, and upon what paradigm was it fashioned, and what is its ultimate purpose, and a discourse upon the celestial spheres of the greater and lesser cosmos. The 7th chapter, regarding the inception of human corporal forms, which represent the final manifestation within the greater cosmos. The 8th chapter, pertaining to the knowledge of the earth, fashioned from the residual ferment of Adam's clay, peace be upon him, and the wonders and marvels it encompasses, and which is known as the earth of reality. The 9th chapter, on the understanding of the existence of the fiery mingled spirits. The 10th chapter, concerning the cycle of sovereignty and the primal attainment within it from the first existent being, and the final attainment within it from that which ultimately departed from it. And what is the duration of the abode from which it departed, and God's affirmation of this dominion until its sovereign arrives? And what is the rank of the world that lies between Jesus, peace be upon him, and Muhammad, may God's blessings and peace be upon him? The 11th chapter, in elucidation of our celestial fathers and our terrestrial mothers. The 12th chapter, a discourse upon the cycle of the Master of the world, Muhammad, may God's blessings and peace be upon him, and that the span of time during his epoch is an extension of his very form, which God, exalted be he, sustains in its creation. 17. 4. The 13th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the bearers of the throne, who are Israfil, Adam, Mikael, Ibrahim, Jibril, Ridwan and Malik. Peace be upon them all. The 14th chapter, pertaining to the profound secrets of the prophets, saints and leaders of nations, from Adam unto Muhammad, peace be upon them, and that the spiritual pole remains one since God created it, never to perish. And where is its abode? The 15th chapter, in elucidation of the breaths of existence, and the comprehension of the perfected poles and their inner mysteries. The 16th chapter, regarding the understanding of the lower realms and the cosmic sciences, and the very origin of the comprehension of truth, exalted be he, from them, and the knowledge of the spiritual pillars, Autad, and the seven substitutes, Abdal, and who among the celestial spirits governs them, and the intricate arrangement of their spheres. The 17th chapter, on the transmission of cosmic knowledge, and an excerpt from the divine emanating primal sciences. The 18th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the Mahdi's followers and the matters pertaining thereto, and its measure within the hierarchy of sciences, and the knowledge that manifests from it in the entire cosmos. The 19th chapter, pertaining to the reason for the diminution and augmentation of knowledge, and his saying, Exalted be he. 17. 4. Part 2 of the Meccan Revelations. Say, my Lord, increase me in knowledge. 21:14. And his saying, Peace be upon him. Verily, God does not seize knowledge. 18. 4. By snatching it away from the breasts of scholars, but he seizes it by seizing the scholars themselves. The Hadith, the 20th chapter. Regarding the comprehension of vital knowledge, whence did it originate, and whither does it culminate, and what is its essence, and whether it pertains to the length of the world, or its breadth, or both. The 21st chapter, pertaining to the knowledge of three cosmic sciences, and their interweaving one within the other. The 22nd chapter, in elucidation of the stations, manazil, and the abodes, manzal, and the systematic arrangement of all cosmic sciences. The 23rd chapter, concerning the understanding of the protected poles, Aktab al-Masunin, and the secrets of the stations of their voices. The 24th chapter, regarding that which emerged from the cosmic sciences and the wonders they encompassed, and those who attained them among humankind, and the ranks of their poles, and the secrets of partnership between two sheikhs, and the hearts specially imbued with breaths of existence and their origin. And for each, what is the culmination of their stations? The 25th chapter, in elucidation of a specific defined passage. And the profound secrets of the poles, Aktab, specifically linked to four categories of the cosmos, and the secret of the station, Manzil, and the stations, Manazil, and who among mankind entered therein. The compendium of the book's portals, the 26th and 27th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of symbols and the veiled allusions to their profound realities and their sciences. The 27th and 28th portals, pertaining to the discernment of subtle nuances and comprehensive essences, for you have been beckoned to your communion. And this pertains to the stations of the luminous realm and their profound mysteries, the 28th and 29th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of intricate subtleties and how are they perfected. The 39th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the secret of Salman, whom he joined to the household of the Prophet, and the subtle spiritual lineages that stem from them, and his saying, and the discernment of their profound mysteries. The 30th and 31st portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the first and second strata of the Tarkibaniya, Tarkibiya, spiritual lineage. The 31st and 32nd portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the foundations of the Tarkiban, Tarkiban, Tum. The 32nd and 33rd portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the guiding spiritual poles, Aktab Mudabirin, from the second division of the Tarkibaniya, Tarkibiya, total tunes. The 33rd and 34th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the steadfast spiritual poles, Aktab Tabatiyin, their profound mysteries and the manner of their foundational principles, 15. The 34th and 35th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of a soul who has attained realization in the station of breaths, thus manifesting secrets which I shall unfold. The 35th and 36th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of this realized soul in the station of breaths, and their profound mysteries after their demise. 18. The second part of the Meccan Revelations, the 36th and 37th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the Christians, their spiritual poles, and their foundational principles. The 37th and 38th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the spiritual poles of the followers of Jesus, and their profound mysteries. The 38th and 39th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of those spiritual poles who apprehended the Mohammedan station, but did not attain its full measure amongst the other spiritual poles. The 39th and 40th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the station to which the saint descends if the truth expels him. May God grant us and you refuge from such an event. And what pertains to this station of wonders and divine sciences, and the discernment of the profound mysteries of the spiritual lineage of this station. The 40th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of a station adjacent to a partial branch of the sciences of the cosmos, and its arrangement, its ranks, and its spiritual lineages. The 41st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the people of the night, and the variance of their strata and their distinct positions in their spiritual ranks, and the mysteries of their spiritual poles. The 42nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of chivalry and its young practitioners, their stations and strata, and the mysteries of their spiritual poles. 15. The 43rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of a group of the spiritual poles of the devoutly pious, and the universality of that station. The 44th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the Hayalil and their imams in the station of Hulala. The 45th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of those who returned after having reached their destination, and amongst them are those whose spiritual poles return. 10. The compendium of the book's portals, the 46th and 47th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of knowledge and the scarcity of its grasp, and its fruit from the mysteries of the righteous, the 47th and 48th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries and the description of the lower stations and their ranks, and how the Gnostic finds solace from its mention due to its alternations, thus being drawn to it despite his elevated station. And what is the mystery that reveals itself to him, beckoning him to this? The 48th and 49th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of a deity who is an object of adoration for all. The 49th and 50th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of where I might find the breath of the All-Merciful from Yemen, and the discernment of this station and its inhabitants. The 50th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the men of neighbourliness and incapability. The 51st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of men of piety who have realized the station of the breath of the All-Merciful. The 52nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the reason for which the unveilers, Mukashifain, flee from the verdancy of the unseen to the realm of the perceptible. The 53rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the duties of acts which the seeker undertakes upon himself before the advent of the spiritual guide. 15. The 54th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the subtle illusions. The 55th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of satanic whispers. The 56th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of discernment and the soundness of its hearing, 18. The second part of the Meccan Revelations. The 57th and 58th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the attainment of divine inspiration through a certain type of inference, and the discernment of the soul. The 58th and 59th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of the people of inferential inspiration, and the discernment of the knowledge of prohibition that overflows upon the heart, thus separating from its whispers and desires. The XXV, so now 60th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of time, both the existent and the predetermined. The 60th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the elements and the dominion of the higher realm over the lower realm. And in which cycle of the outermost celestial spheres did this human world exist? And what spirituality awaits us therein? The 61st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of Gehenna, hell, and the greatest of creatures in torment within it, and the discernment of the higher realm. The 62nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the ranks of the fire. The 63rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the continuation of people in the barzakh, interspace, between this world and the resurrection. The 64th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the resurrection and its stations, and the manner of the raising. The 65th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of paradise, its stations and its degrees, and what pertains to this chapter 15. The 66th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mystery of the law, Sharia, both outwardly and inwardly, and by which divine name was it brought into being. The compendium of the book's portals. The 67th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of there is no God but God, Muhammad is the messenger of God. The 68th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of purification. The 69th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of prayer. The 70th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of charity, zakat. The 71st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of fasting. The 72nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of the pilgrimage, Hajj, and the discernment of its rituals and the signs of its honoured house, Kaaba, and what the truth manifests during the circumambulation of the house, Tawaf, from the mysteries of the Gnostic. The 73rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries that manifest to the struggling one, Mujahid, during composition and deviation, and how much deviation occurs from confrontation. 59. The second section, pertaining to transactions, interactions. The 74th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of repentance. The 75th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of abandoning repentance. The 76th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of spiritual struggle, Mujahada. The 77th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of abandoning spiritual struggle. The second part of the Meccan Revelations. The 78th and 79th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of spiritual seclusion, Khalwa. The 79th and 80th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of abandoning spiritual seclusion. The 80th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of isolation, withdrawal, Uzla. The 81st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of abandoning isolation. The 82nd and 83rd portals, pertaining to the apprehension of spiritual flight, Firar. The 83rd and 84th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of abandoning spiritual flight. The 84th and 85th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of God consciousness, taqwa. The 85th and 86th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the piety of veiling and concealment. The 86th and 87th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the piety of worldly boundaries. The 87th and 88th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the piety of the fire. The 88th and 89th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of the rulings of the sacred law. The 89th and 90th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of supererogatory acts in their absolute sense. The 90th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of obligatory duties and prophetic traditions. The 91st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of devout abstinence, wara, and its mysteries. The 92nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning devout abstinence. The 93rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of asceticism, zuhd, and its mysteries. The 94th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning asceticism. The 95th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of generosity, nobility, magnanimity, and altruism, 18. The compendium of the book's portals upon the essence and beyond the essence, with the quest for recompense and its relinquishment. The 96th and 97 portals, pertaining to the apprehension of silence and its mysteries. The 97th and 98th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of speech and its mysteries. The 98th and 99th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of wakefulness and its mysteries. The 99th and 100th portals, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of sleep and its mysteries. The 100th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of fear and its mysteries. The 101st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning fear and its mysteries. The 102nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of hope and its mysteries. The 103rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning hope and its mysteries. The 104th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of sorrow and its mysteries. The 105th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning sorrow and its cause. The 106th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of hunger and its mysteries. The 107th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning hunger and its cause. The 108th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of trial, fitna, desire, shahwa, and the love of novelty in women and taking companionship from them, and when does the seeker return to such companionship? 15. The 109th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the distinction between desire and will, and the elucidation of the desire encompassed by divine vicegerency. 18. The second part of the Meccan Revelations, which is ours in this world, and the desire that is ours in paradise, and the distinction between pleasure and desire, and the apprehension of the station of one who desires, and one who is desired, and one who does not desire, and one who does not desire, and one who desires. Chatutunrolstumiyab. 110th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the mysteries of humility, kudu, and reverence, kushu. The 111th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning humility and reverence, and its mysteries. The 112th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of opposing the self, nafs, and its mysteries. The 113th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of assisting the lower self in its aims and its mysteries. The 114th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of envy and discouragement, and their praiseworthy and blameworthy aspects. The 115th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of intention, niyyah, and its praiseworthy and blameworthy aspects. The 116th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of contentment, qana'ah, and its mysteries. The 117th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of greed and eagerness. The 118th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of reliance, tawakkul, and its mysteries. The 119th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning reliance. The 120th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of gratitude, shukr, and its mysteries, 18. The 121st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning gratitude and its mysteries. The Compendium of the Books Portals, the 122nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of certain conviction, yaqin, and its mysteries. The 123rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning certain conviction and its mysteries. The 124th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of patience, sabr, its intricacies and its mysteries. The 125th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning patience and its mysteries. The 126th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of vigilance, muraqabah, and its mysteries. The 127th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning vigilance, its measure, and its mysteries. The 128th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of contentment with divine decree, reader, and its mysteries. The 129th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning contentment and its mysteries. The 130th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of servanthood, ubudiyya, and its mysteries. The 131st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning servanthood and its mysteries. The 132nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of uprightness, istiqamah, and its mysteries. The 133rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning uprightness and its mysteries. The 134th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of sincerity, ikhlas, and its mysteries. The 135th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning sincerity and its mysteries. The second part of the Meccan Revelations, the 136th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of truthfulness, sidq, and its mysteries. The 137th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning truthfulness and its mysteries. The 138th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of modesty, haya, and its mysteries. The 139th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning modesty and its mysteries. The 140th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of spiritual freedom, hurriyyah, and its mysteries. The 141st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning spiritual freedom and its mysteries. The 142nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of remembrance, dhikr, and its mysteries. The 143rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning remembrance and its mysteries. The 144th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of contemplation, fiqh, and its mysteries. The 145th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning contemplation and its mysteries. The 146th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of exemplification, qudwa, and its mysteries. The 147th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning exemplification and its mysteries. The 148th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of spiritual insight, firasa, and its mysteries. The 149th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning spiritual insight and its mysteries. The 150th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of protective jealousy, gira, and its mysteries. The 151st chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of abandoning protective jealousy and its mysteries. The 152nd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of sainthood, wilaya, and its mysteries. The 153rd chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of human sainthood and its mysteries, which is encompassed by divine vicegerency. The 154th chapter, pertaining to the apprehension of the station of angelic sainthood and its mysteries. The 155th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of prophethood and its secrets. The 156th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of human prophethood and its secrets. The 157th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of angelic prophethood and its secrets. The 158th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of messengerhood and its secrets. The 159th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of human messengerhood and its secrets. The 160th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of angelic messengerhood. The 161st chapter, on the knowledge of the station uniting prophethood and saintly truthfulness, Al-Siddiqiyya. The 162nd chapter, on the knowledge of the station of spiritual poverty, Al-Faqr, and its secrets, Qur'an 35:15. The 163rd chapter, on the knowledge of the station of spiritual wealth, Al-Ghina, and its secrets. The 164th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of Sufism, Al-Tasawwuf, and its secrets. The 165th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of verification, Al-Tahqiq, and the verifiers. The 166th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of wisdom, Al-Hikmah, and the wise. The 167th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of the alchemy of happiness and its secrets. The 168th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of moral propriety, Al-Adab, and its secrets. The 169th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of abandoning moral propriety and its secrets. The 170th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of companionship, Al-Suhbah, and its secrets. The 171st chapter, on the knowledge of the station of abandoning companionship and its secrets. The 172nd chapter, on the knowledge of the station of divine unity, Al-Tawhid, and its secrets. The 173rd chapter, on the knowledge of the station of duality, Al-Tathniyah, which is associating partners with God, Al-Shirk, and its secrets. The 174th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of journeying, Al-Safar, which is wandering, Al-Siyaha, and its secrets. Part 2 of the Meccan openings. The 175th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of abandoning, journeying, and its secrets. The 176th chapter, on the knowledge of the conditions of people at the time of death, according to their stations. The 177th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of gnosis, al-Ma'rifah, regarding the difference between the Sufis and the verifiers therein. The 178th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of love, al-Mahabba, and its secrets. The 179th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of intimate friendship, al-Kula, and its secrets. The 180th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of longing, al-Shawq, and yearning, al-Ishtiyaq, and their secrets. The 181st chapter, on the knowledge of the station of respecting the spiritual masters, shuyukh, and guarding their hearts. The 182nd chapter, on the knowledge of the station of spiritual audition, al-Sama, and its secrets. The 183rd chapter, on the knowledge of the station of abandoning spiritual audition and its secrets. The 184th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of miraculous gifts, al-Karamat. The 185th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of abandoning miraculous gifts. The 186th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of the breaking of natural laws, Kark al-Adat. The 187th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of the evident miracle, al-Mu'jiza, and how the miraculous act occurs for one who possesses a karama due to the difference of states. The 188th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of visions, al-Ruya, which are the glad tidings, al-Mubashirat. The 189th chapter, on the knowledge of the form of the wayfarer, al-Salik. 60. The third section, on the states, the 190th chapter, on the knowledge of the traveller, al-Musafir, and his states. The 191st chapter, on the knowledge of travel and the path. The 192nd chapter, on the knowledge of the state, al-Hal, its secrets and its men. The 193rd chapter, on the knowledge of the station, al-Maqam, and its secrets. The 194th chapter, on the knowledge of the place, al-Makan, and its secrets. The 195th chapter, on the knowledge of ecstatic utterances, al-Shath, and its secrets. The 196th chapter, on the knowledge of the ascendants, al-Tawali, and their secrets. The 197th chapter, on the knowledge of going, al-Dahab, and its secrets. The 198th chapter, on the knowledge of the breath, al-Nafas, vowelled with a fatha on the fe, and its secrets. The 199th chapter, on the knowledge of the innermost secret, al-Sir, and its secrets. The 200th chapter, on the knowledge of union, al-Wazl, and its secrets. The 201st chapter, on the knowledge of separation, al-Fazl, and its secrets. The 202nd chapter, on the knowledge of discipline, al-Adab, and its secrets. The 203rd chapter, on the knowledge of spiritual exercise, al-Riyada, and its secrets. The 204th chapter, on the knowledge of adornment, al-Tahali, with the unpointed ha, and its secrets. Part 2 of the Meccan openings. The 205th chapter, on the knowledge of divestment, Al-Takhali, with the pointed car and its secrets. The 206th chapter, on the knowledge of divine manifestation, Al-Tajali, with the letter Jim and its secrets. The 207th chapter, on the knowledge of the cause, Al-Illa, and its secrets. The 208th chapter, on the knowledge of disquiet, Al-Inziaj, and its secrets. The 209th chapter, on the knowledge of witnessing, Al-Mushahada, and its secrets. The 210th chapter, on the knowledge of unveiling, Al-Mukashafa, and its secrets. The 211th chapter, on the knowledge of the gleams, Al-Lawari, and their secrets. The 212th chapter, on the knowledge of coloration, Al-Talwin, and its secrets. The 213th chapter, on the knowledge of zeal, Al-Ghaira, and its secrets. The 214th chapter, on the knowledge of perplexity, Al-Hayra, and its secrets. The 215th chapter, on the knowledge of the subtle grace, Al-Latifa, and its secrets. The 216th chapter, on the knowledge of spiritual openings, Al-Futu, and its secrets. The 217th chapter, on the knowledge of branding, Al-Washm, and marking, Al-Rashm, and their secrets. The 218th chapter, on the knowledge of contraction, Al-Kabd, and its secrets. The 219th chapter, on the knowledge of expansion, Al-Bast, and its secrets. The 220th chapter, on the knowledge of annihilation, Al-Fana, and its secrets. The 221st chapter, on the knowledge of subsistence, Al-Baka, and its secrets. The 222nd chapter, on the knowledge of gathering, Al-Jam, and its secrets. The 223rd chapter, on the knowledge of dispersion, Al-Tafrika, and its secrets. The 224th chapter, on the knowledge of the essence of judgment, Al-Tahkim, and its secrets. The 225th chapter, on the knowledge of additions, Al-Zawaid, and their secrets. The 226th chapter, on the knowledge of will, Al-Irada, and its secrets. The 227th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of the desired one, Al-Murad, and his secret. The 228th chapter, on the knowledge of the aspirant, Al-Murid, and his secrets. The 229th chapter, on the knowledge of high aspiration, Al-Himma, and its secrets. The 230th chapter, on the knowledge of estrangement, Al-Ghurba, and its secrets. The 231st chapter, on the knowledge of plotting, Al-Makkah, and its secrets. The 232nd chapter, on the knowledge of eradication, Al-Istilam, and its secrets. The 233rd chapter, on the knowledge of desire, Al-Raghba, and its secrets. The 234th chapter, on the knowledge of awe, Al-Rahba, and its secrets. The 235th chapter, on the knowledge of feigned ecstasy, Al-Tawajud, and its secrets. The 236th chapter, on the knowledge of passionate finding, Al-Wad, and its secrets. The 237th chapter, on the knowledge of existence, Al-Wujud. The 238th chapter, on the knowledge of time, Al-Waqt, and its secrets. The 239th chapter, on the knowledge of majesty, Al-Haiba, and its secrets. The 240th chapter, on the knowledge of intimacy, Al-Uns, and its secrets. Part 2 of the Meccan openings. The 241st chapter, on the knowledge of glory, Al-Jalal, and its secrets. The 242nd chapter, on the knowledge of beauty, Al-Jamal, and its secrets. The 243rd chapter, on the knowledge of perfection, Al-Kamal, which is equilibrium, Al-Itidal, and it is the heights, Al-Araf, Qur'an 7:46, and it is also the wall of iron, and it is divestment from judgment upon it. The 244th chapter, on the knowledge of absence, Al-Ghaiba, and its secrets. The 245th chapter, on the knowledge of presence, Al-Hudur, and its secrets. The 246th chapter, on the knowledge of intoxication, Al-Suka, and its secrets. The 247th chapter, on the knowledge of sobriety, Al-Saw, and its secrets. The 248th chapter, on the knowledge of tasting, Al-Dok, and its secrets. The 249th chapter, on the knowledge of drinking, Al-Shurb, and its secrets. The 250th chapter, on the knowledge of quenching, Al-Rai, and its secrets. The 251st chapter, on the knowledge of the lack of XXV for one's money to one who has drunk, and its secrets. The 252nd chapter, on the knowledge of Irasha, Al-Maho, and its secrets. The 253rd chapter, on the knowledge of affirmation, Al-Isbait, and its secrets. The 254th chapter, on the knowledge of concealment, Al-Satar, and its secrets. The 255th chapter, on the knowledge of effacement, Al-Mark, and the effacement of the effacement. The 256th chapter, on the knowledge of manifesting, Al-Ibda, and its secrets. The 257th chapter, on the knowledge of lecture, Al-Muhadara, and its secrets. The 258th chapter, on the knowledge of flashes, Al-Lawami, and their secrets. The 259th chapter, on the knowledge of onsets, Al-Hujum, and sudden occurrences, Al-Bawadi, and their secrets. The 260th chapter, on the knowledge of nearness, Al-Qurb, and its secrets. The 261st chapter, on the knowledge of distance, Al-Bud, and its secrets. The 262nd chapter, on the knowledge of the religious law, Al-Sharia. The 263rd chapter, on the knowledge of the ultimate truth, Al-Haqiqah. The 264th chapter, on the knowledge of passing thoughts, Al-Kawatir. The 265th chapter, on the knowledge of the incoming inspiration, Al-Warid. The 266th chapter, on the knowledge of the witness, Al-Shahid. The 267th chapter, on the knowledge of the soul, Al-Nafs, voweled with a sukoon on the FR. The 268th chapter, on the knowledge of the spirit, Al-Ruh. The 269th chapter, on the knowledge of certainty, Al-Yaqin, the eye of certainty, Ain al-Yaqin, Qur'an 102.7, and the truth of certainty, Haq al-Yaqin, Qur'an 69:51. 61, the fourth section, on the abodes. The 270th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode, Manzil, of the pole, Al-Kutub, and the two Imams regarding the whispered prayers. The 271st chapter, on the knowledge of the abode. At daybreak the people praise the night journey regarding the whispered prayers. Part 2 of the Meccan openings. The 272nd chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of transcending the divine unity, Tanzih al-Tawheed, from it. The 273rd chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the destruction of passion and the soul, Al-Nafs, from the Mosaic standing. The 274th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the appointed time, Al-Ajal, named in the Mosaic standing. The 275th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the disavowal of idols from the Mosaic standing. The 276th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the basin, Al-Hawd, and its secrets from the Muhammadan standing. The 277th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of denial and miserliness from the Mosaic standing and its secrets. The 278th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of familiarity, Al-Ulfa, and its secrets from the Mosaic and Muhammadan standing. The 279th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of consideration, Al-Itibar, and its secrets from the Muhammadan standing. The 280th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of my wealth, and its secrets from the Mosaic standing. The 281st chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of joining and establishing the one standing from the Muhammadan presence. The 282nd chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of visiting the dead and its secrets from the Mosaic presence. The 283rd chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the breakers, Al-Qawasim, and its secrets from the Muhammadan presence. The 284th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the noble keeping pace, Al-Mujara, and its secrets from the Muhammadan presence. The 285th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of whispered prayer, inanimate objects, and whosoever has obtained half of the Muhammadan presence and the Mosaic. The 286th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode. Who said to him, Be, so it was, and he was not, from the Muhammadan presence. The 287th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the eternal manifestation, Al-Tajali al-Samadani, and its secrets from the Muhammadan presence. The 288th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of recitation, Al-Tilawa. The priority from the Mosaic presence. The 289th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of illiterate knowledge, Al-Ilm al-Ummi, which is that knowledge which proceeded from the Mosaic presence. The 290th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of affirming blessings, Al-Ni'am, from the Mosaic presence. The 291st chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the foremost of time, Sadr al-Zaman, which is the celestial sphere, the fourth from the Muhammadan presence. The 292nd chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of sharing the knowledge of the unseen and the testimony, Qur'an 673 from the Mosaic presence. Part 2 of the Meccan openings, the 293rd chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the existence of the cause of the world of testimony and the cause of the appearance of the world of the unseen from the Mosaic presence. The 294th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the Meccan Muhammadan from the Mosaic presence. The 295th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of honourable numbers from the Muhammadan presence. The 296th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the transfer of the qualities of the people of felicity to the people of misery from the Mosaic presence. The 297th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the proportioning of the human settlement in the highest station, Qur'an 95, from the Muhammadan presence. The 298th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of remembrance, Al-Dhikr, from the high world in the Muhammadan presences. The 299th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the punishment of believers from the Syriac standing in the Muhammadan presence. The 300th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the cause of the division of the high world in the Muhammadan presences. The 301st chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the divided book between the people of bliss and the people of torment. The 302nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the higher world's departure and the existence of the lower world. The 303rd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the Gnostic Gabriel descending from the Muhammadan presence. The 304th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of preferring poverty over wealth from the Mosaic presence, and preferring wealth over poverty from the Jesus-like presence. The 305th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the succession of spiritual states upon the hearts of men from the Muhammadan presence. The 306th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the dispute of the Supreme Assembly, 3869, from the Mosaic presence. The 307th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the angels descending upon the Muhammadan, standing in the Mosaic presence. 4130. The 308th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of confusion from the Muhammadan presence. The 309th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the Malamiyah, people of blame, from the Muhammadan presence. The 310th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the ringing clatter from the spiritual presence of the Mosaic. The 311th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the occurrences of the specialities of the unseen from the Muhammadan presence. Volume 2 of the Meccan Revelations. The 312th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the modality of revelation descending upon the hearts of the saints, and their protection therein from the devils, from the Muhammadan presence. The 313th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of weeping and wailing from the Muhammadan presence. The 314th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the distinction between the degrees of the angels, the prophets, and the saints from the Muhammadan presence. The 315th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the necessity of punishment from the unseen Muhammadan presence. The 316th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the severe divine attributes inscribed upon the divine human preserved tablet from the Mosaic presence. The 317th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of tribulation and its blessings, which is the station of the Imam, who is upon the left of the pole, Khutbah, and it is the station of Abu Madyan, who was in Bajaya. May God have mercy upon him. The 318th chapter, concerning the knowledge of abrogating the Muhammadan law for psychological motives. God save us and you from that. The 319th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of releasing the soul from its fetters, from one of the aspects of the law regarding the abandonment of the cause for provision by way of trust in God, a cause that draws provision, and concerning the equitable middle path therein, which does not depart from the servitude of causes. The 320th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of glorifying the two grips and distinguishing them. The 321st chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of distinction between the world of the unseen and the world of witnessing, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 322nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of he who sold the truth for the creation, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 323rd chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of a glad tiding given by a bringer of glad tidings, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 324th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of gathering men and women in certain divine abodes, and it is from the protecting presence. The 325th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of the Qur'an from the Muhammadan presence. The 326th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of dialogue and dispute, and it is from the Muhammadan and Mosaic presence. Volume 2 of the Meccan Revelations. The 327th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of the extension and the classification from the Muhammadan presence. The 328th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of the departure of composite bodies into the simple elements at the casting, and it is from the Muhammadan presences. The 329th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of bounties and emptiness leading to tribulation, and it is from the Muhammadan presences. The 330th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of the moon from the crescent to the full moon, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 331st chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of vision, ruya, and dream, ruya, and the power over them, and the ascent, the calling out, the reception, and the descent, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 332nd chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of divine guarding for the people of the Muhammadan stations, and it is from the Mosaic presence. The 333rd chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of I created things for your sake, and I created you for my sake, so do not degrade what I created for my sake by what I created for your sake, and it is from the Muhammadan presences. The 334th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of limiting the non-existent, and it is from the Mosaic presences. The 335th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of brotherhood, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 336th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of the plants swearing allegiance to the pole, Kutbah, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 337th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, with some of the world, and it is from the Mosaic presences. The 338th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of the obstacles of yearning and its secrets, and it is from the Mosaic presence. The 339th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station. The law came before the truth, demanding provision, support, from the Muhammadan presence. The 340th chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of he who has news from God concerning Ibn Sayyad, no news, and it is from the Mosaic presence. The 341st chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of imitation in the secrets, and it is from the Mosaic presence. Volume 2 of the Meccan Revelations, the 342nd chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of two separate secrets gathered by one presence of the presences of revelation, and it is from the Mosaic presence. The 343rd chapter. Concerning the knowledge of the station of two secrets detailed in the presence of the King's praise. The 344th chapter. concerning the knowledge of the station of a secret from the secrets of forgiveness, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 345th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the secret of sincerity in religion, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 346th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of a secret wherein some of the Gnostics were truthful, so he saw how its light emanates from the sides of that station upon him, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 347th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the first row with God, exalted is he, and the doubt regarding God and the opening of Khaybar and what descends on that day of secrets, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 348th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of two secrets from the secrets of the heart of gathering and existence, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 349th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of opening the doors and closing them, and the character of every community, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 350th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the interrogative manifestation and lifting the covering from the meanings, and it is from the Muhammadan presence, from the name the Sustainer, Ar-Rabb. The 351st chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the entanglement of souls and the spirits in the attributes, and it is from the loving presence, Hadra al-Wadud, from the Muhammadan presence, from the name the loving Al-Wadud. The 352nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of three talismanic, pictured arranged secrets from the Muhammadan dissensions. The 353rd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of three talismanic, wise secrets, pointing to the knowledge of the cause and the payment of its due, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 354th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the further Syriac, and it is from the Mosaic presence. The 355th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the paths generated by the earth of worship and their expansion, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 356th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of muted secrets. Volume 2 of the Meccan Revelations, and the Western secret in the divine manners and psychological revelation, from the Muhammadan presence. The 357th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the dumb beasts regarding the divine presence and their subjugation under two secrets, and their rectitude. The 358th chapter, concerning the knowledge of three secrets whose lights are diverse, and the fleeing and the warning and the authenticity of the reports. And from this station, I said poetry in a retreat I entered, wherein I attained what I attained, and it is of the most wondrous of stations and their lights. The 359th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of it is you I mean, and hear, O neighbour, which is the station of distinguishing the command and the form of unveiling in concealment from the Muhammadan presence. The 360th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of darknesses, erasure, and witness lights, and attaching those not of the people of the house to the people of the house, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 361st chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of partnership with the truth in determination, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 362nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the two prostrations, the prostration of the whole and the part, and the prostration of the heart and the face, and what it contains of secrets, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 363rd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of referring the Gnostic who does not know him to the one below him, so he may teach him what is not in his capacity to know, and the transcendence of the Creator above joy and mirth, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 364th chapter, concerning the knowledge of two talismanic secrets. Whoever knows them attains the repose in this world and the hereafter, and the divine jealousy, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 365th chapter, concerning the knowledge of talismanic secrets connected to the presence of mercy regarding one whose station and state are hidden from the cosmos, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 366th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the Mahdi, who will come at the end of time, whom the Messenger of God, peace be upon him, gave glad tidings of, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 367th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the fifth trust, Tawakkul, which one of the verifiers unveiled due to the scarcity of those accepting it and the limiting of understandings from grasping it, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 368th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of Atmi, and it did not pass. The command alone, and a category of the world, nothing is revealed to it. Volume 2 of the Meccan Revelations, perpetually and what it contains of secrets, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 369th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the keys to the treasuries of generosity, and the effect of the world of witnessing upon the world of the unseen, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 370th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of the increase, the secret and two secrets from the secrets of existence and transformation, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 371st chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of a secret and three secrets of the tablet of illiteracy, Umiyyah, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 372nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of a secret and two secrets, and your praise is upon you regarding what is not yours, and the answering of the truth to you in that meaning, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. The 373rd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the station of three secrets appearing in the water of wise judgment regarding the scholar compounded upon the high world, and the remaining of the world for eternity, and their transfer of form, and it is from the Muhammadan presence. Page 109, the 374th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of vision and sight, and the antecedents of things in the divine presence, and that for the disbelievers there is a precedence, just as there is a precedence for the believers, and that every group advances upon its precedence, coming forward with its imam in justice and bounty. And this is of the Muhammadan presence. The 375th chapter, on the knowledge of the resemblance of imagination and the world of realities and mixture, and this is of the Muhammadan presence. The 376th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode that gathers the friends of God and the enemies within the presence of wisdom, and the combat of the unseen world, one with another. And this abode comprises 1,000 stations, and this is of the Muhammadan presence. The 377th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the prostration of self-subsistence, Qayyumiyyah, and truthfulness and glory, and the pearl and the wall, and this is of the Muhammadan presence. The 378th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the animalistic community and enumeration, and the three supernal secrets, and the precedence of the latecomer and the delay of the forerunner. And this is of the Muhammadan presence. Page 110, Volume 2 of the Meccan Openings. The 379th chapter. On the knowledge of the abode of loosing and binding, and compulsion and humiliation, and the genesis of supplication in the form of information. And this is of the Muhammadan presence. The 380th chapter. On the knowledge of the abode of the scholars are the heirs of the prophets. And this is of the Muhammadan presence. The 381st chapter. On the knowledge of the abode of unification, Tawheed, and gathering, and it contains 5,000 stations wherein I am distinguished. And the perfection of his witnessing is in he who witnesses him in the midst of the month, at its very end. And this is of the Muhammadan presence. The 382nd chapter, on the knowledge of the abode of the seals and the number of breaths. Text fades, and this is of the Muhammadan presence. Page 111, 62. The 5th section, on the mutual stations, Al-Munazalat. The 384th chapter. On the knowledge of the mutual stations of address. And this is his saying, High and exalted is he. It is not fitting for a mortal that God should speak unto him save by revelation or from behind a veil. 42:51. And this is of the Muhammadan presence. The 385th chapter. On the knowledge of a mutual station from a subjugated lowly one, Hakir, and from a refraining one. The 386th chapter. On the knowledge of the mutual station of the rope of the jugular vein, and the quality of being with. The 387th chapter. On the knowledge of the mutual station of divine prideful greatness, Al-Kibraya, and the humility of greatness. The 388th chapter. On the knowledge of a mutual station unknown to the servant, which is, if you ascend without specific designation, intending the truth, God. The 389th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. To me belongs your being, and to you belongs my being. The 390th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. A time for the thing and its existence except I be. Thus I have no time. And were it not for you, you would have no time, for you are my time, and I am your time. Page 112, Volume 2 of the Meccan Openings, the 391st. Chapter on the knowledge of the mutual station of the flowing path upon which no questioner stands firm. The 392nd chapter. On the knowledge of a mutual station. He whom our mercy pities, we have mercy upon him. And he whom our mercy does not pity, then our wrath is upon him, and we have forgotten him. The 393rd chapter. On the knowledge of a mutual station. He who pauses at that which awes him perishes. The 394th chapter. On the knowledge of a mutual station. He who is disciplined connects, and he who connects yet does not return, even if he were other than well-mannered. The 395th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who enters my presence and remains alive, so his solace is in the death of his companion. The 396th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who gathers the direct knowledges and the sciences, I have veiled him from me. The 397th chapter. On the knowledge of a mutual station. Unto him ascend the good words, and the righteous deed does he exalt. 35:10. The 398th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who admonishes the people while not knowing me, and he who reminds them of me, has known me. The 399th chapter, on the knowledge of the abode. He who enters it is struck by it, and none remains save the one who entered it. Page 113. The 400th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who manifests to me through my interior, to him have I manifested, and he who pauses at my limit, upon him have I looked. The 401st chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. The dead and the living have no path to the vision of me. The 402nd chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who overcomes me, I overcome him, and he whom I overcome his request. So the leaning is toward the first piece. The 403rd chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. I have no proof against my servants. What have you said to even one of them? Why did you act? Except he said to me, you acted. And he spoke the truth. But the antecedent decree is outstripping, and there is no alteration. The 404th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who is violent with his subjects strives for the destruction of his kingdom, and he who is gentle with them remains a king. Every master has killed a servant of his servants, thus truly murder is from his sovereignty, not from me. So look. The 405th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who makes his heart a house and evacuates it of other than me, no one knows what I give him. So do not resemble him to the inhabited house, for indeed he is. Page 114. Volume 2 of the Meccan Openings. My angels, not my house, and for this reason I do not dwell in it, my close friend. Rather, my house is the heart of my servant who strives. My earth and my heavens do not encompass me. The 406th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. What appears from me never appears to anything, and it is not fitting that it should appear. The 407th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. The quickest of glances is a glance snatched from me. If you were to look at other than me, you would not be weak, but you are made weak. The 408th chapter, on the knowledge of the mutual station of the Sabbath. Day. Remove from yourself the wrapper of seriousness which you tied, for the world has finished with me, and I have finished with it. The 409th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. My names are a veil over you, so if you lift them, you arrive at me. The 410th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. And that the final end is unto thy sustainer. 53:4-2. So be proud by this Lord, and you shall be joyous. The 411th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. The book precedes him, so he enters the fire from a presence. He is almost about not to enter the fire. So fear the book and do not fear me, for I and you are alike. Page 115. The 412th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who is for me as if he had not been is never disgraced. The 413th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who asks me for what went forth in my decree, asks me, and he who does not ask me for what went forth in my decree. The 414th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. I am not seen save through a veil. The 415th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who calls upon me has performed the duty of his servitude, and he who is silent has done justice to himself. The 416th chapter, on the knowledge of the mutual station of the eye of the heart. The 417th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of he whose reward is upon God. The 418th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who does not understand, nothing is communicated to him. The 419th chapter, on the knowledge of the mutual station of the instruments, Sukuk. The 420th chapter, on the knowledge of the mutual station of divestment from the stations. The 421st chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who seeks access to me through the avenue of proof and demonstration never arrives at me, for verily nothing resembles me. Page 116, Volume 2 of the Meccan Openings. The 422nd chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who returns to me, verily I have given him my realization. The 423rd chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who is jealous for me has not remembered me. The 424th chapter, on the knowledge of loving me for remaining with me, and you love returning to your family, so stop until I heal myself from you, and then you may pass. The 425th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who seeks knowledge has diverted his sight from me. The 426th chapter, on the knowledge of the mutual station of the secret, which the peace be upon him said, when his sustainer asked him regarding the vision of his Lord, he said, Light, how could I see him? The 427th chapter, on the knowledge of the mutual station of Zepum. 2 bow lengths. 53. The 428th chapter, on the knowledge of the mutual station of inquiry regarding the where and the when. The 429th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who humbles himself to my majesty, upon him have I descended, and he who acts proudly against my majesty, I have magnified myself against him. The 430th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. Verily, I have forbidden you to arrive unto me. Page 117, the 431st chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who veils me, I veil him. The 432nd chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. Whenever you hesitate in a thing save for me, then know your measure. And this is a wonder, a thing that does not know itself. The 433rd chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. Look, whichever manifestation does not give you its very self, do not take it from whosoever takes it. The 434th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. I do not veil you because I wish it, for indeed I possess no things, I only make you firm, fix you. The 435th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. I took the covenant upon myself, at a time appointed and fulfilled, and a time I did not fulfill. So do not object. The 436th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. If you were, in the estimation of the people, as you are with me, or as I am with my servants, they would not worship me. The 437th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who knows his portion from me, I will make him know his portion from himself. For you are with me, as I am with you, a single rank. Page 118, Volume 2 of the Meccan Openings. The 438th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who recites my speech sees my clouds, wherein are lamps which my angels descend. and in it, if he falls silent, I depart from him, and I descend. The 439th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station, 2 bow lengths, 53 shittanj. The second, the 440th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station, the corner of his heart is strengthened by the witnessing of me. The 441st chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. The eyes of the hearts of the Gnostics are gazing at what is with me, not at me. The 442nd chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. He who sees me and knows that he sees me, then he has seen me. The 443rd chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station, the essential unveiling, Kashf Ifani. The 444th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station, he for whom I have written a book of pure covenant that is not miserable. The 445th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. Have you known my friends whom I disciplined with my manners? The 446th chapter, on the knowledge of a mutual station. In the populating of the outskirts of the night are the benefits of good deeds. The 447th chapter, on the knowledge of the station. He who enters the presence of purification speaks through me. The 448th chapter, on the knowledge of the station. He to whom is unveiled anything of what I possess is struck dumb, so how can he ask to see me? The 449th chapter, on the knowledge of the station. My servant worships not my servant. The 450th chapter, on the knowledge of the station. He who stands firm for my manifestation is to me as I am to him. Glory be to me. It is through me, nay, not through me, and this is the reality and the first metaphor. The 451st chapter, on the knowledge of the station, on the exits of the knowledge of the ascending stairways. The 452nd chapter, on the knowledge of the station. My words are entirely an admonition to my servants, if only they would take heed. The 453rd chapter, on the knowledge of the station. My generosity is what I have exchanged for you from wealth, and my generosity is my generosity, and my gift is my pardon for your brother regarding his crime against you. Part 2 of the Meccan openings. The 454th chapter, on the knowledge of the station. No stranger has the strength to withstand us in our presence, and he is known to the nearest of kin. The 455th chapter, on the knowledge of the station. He to whom I turn with my outward aspect is never happy, and he to whom I turn with my inward aspect is never wretched, and vice versa. The 456th chapter, on the knowledge of the station. He who is moved by hearing my words has indeed heard. The 457th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of universal obligation. The 458th chapter, on the knowledge of the station of grasping the sublimities. The 459th chapter, on the knowledge of the station, and they are, in our sight, among the chosen, the excellent, 38:47. The 460th chapter, on the knowledge of the reciprocal stations of Islam, faith and excellence, and the excellence of excellence. The 461st chapter, on the knowledge of the station of one upon whom I have lowered the veil of my protection. He is under my wing, no one knows him, and he knows no one. 63. Section 6, on the spiritual stations, the 462nd chapter, on the knowledge of the Mohammedan poles and their stations. The 463rd chapter, on the knowledge of the 12 poles around whom the sphere of the world revolves. The 464th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of the Mohammedan pole whose abode was, there is no deity save God. 47:19, 37:35. The 465th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, God is most great. The 466th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, glory be to God. The 467th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, praise be to God. The 468th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, praise be to God for every state. The 469th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, I entrust my affair unto God. 40:44. The 470th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and I have not created the invisible beings and men to any end, other than that they may worship me. 51. Part 2 of the Meccan openings, the 471st chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, say, if you love God, follow me, and God will love you. 3. The 472nd chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, so give glad tidings to my servants who listen to the word and follow the best of it. 39:17, 18. Thor Sunasatanes tees thee. 473rd chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and your God is the one God. 2. Chiktir. The 474th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, all that is with you is bound to come to an end, whereas that which is with God is everlasting. 1696. The 475th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and whoever honours the symbols set up by God, it is indeed from the piety of hearts. 20. The 476th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and when it became clear to him that he was an enemy to God, he disavowed him. 9. And the transformation and the strength belong to God. There is no power and no strength save in God. The 477th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and for this let the aspirants aspire. 83. 6. For the like of this let the workers work. 37. 60. The 478th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, if there be but the weight of a mustard seed, and it were within a rock or in the heavens or on earth, God will bring it forth. Verily, God is unfathomable, all aware. 31:6. The 479th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and whoever honours the sacred commandments of God, it is good for him in the sight of his sustainer. 22:3. Gird thyself, for the matter is grave. The 480th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and we granted him wisdom while he was yet a child. 19:12. The 481st chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, verily, we shall not fail to requite those who do good. 18:30. The 482nd chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and he who surrenders his face unto God and is a doer of good has indeed grasped the most trustworthy handhold, and with God rests the final outcome of all events. 31:2. Part 2 of the Meccan openings. The 483rd chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, happy indeed is the one who purifies it, and disappointed is the one who corrupts it. 91:9-10. The 484th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, nay, but when the soul reaches the throat, and you are at that moment looking on. 56:83-84. The 485th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, whoever desires the life of this world and its glitter, we shall repay them for their deeds therein, and they shall not be deprived therein. 11:15. The 486th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and he who rebels against God and his apostle has indeed gone astray, in manifest error. 33. The 487th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and whoever does righteous deeds, be it male or female, and is a believer, we shall most certainly cause him to live a good life. 16:97. The 488th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and never turn your eyes toward that which we have bestowed on some of them for enjoyment, the flower of this worldly life, that we might test them thereby. For the provision of your sustainer is better and more enduring. 20:31. The 489th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, your wealth and your children are but a trial. 64:15. The 490th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, most loathsome is it in the sight of God that you say what you do not do. 61. The 491st chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, do not exult. Verily, God does not love those who exult. 28:76. The 492nd chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, knower of the unseen, he does not disclose his unseen to anyone save to an apostle whom he chooses. 72:26-27. The 493rd chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, say, all is from God. What, then, is amiss with these people that they scarcely understand a tiding? 478. The 494th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, it is only they who are possessed of knowledge among his servants that stand in awe of God. 35 Sotus. The 495th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and whoever of you turns away from his faith and dies as a disbeliever. 2 God 2. 17. Part 2 of the Meccan openings. The 496th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and they did not estimate God with his true estimation. 6. And strive hard in God's cause with all the striving that is due to him. 22:70. The 497th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and most of them believe not in God, without ascribing divine powers to other beings beside him. 12:106. The 498th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and for him who is conscious of God, he prepares a way out. 65. The 499th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, there is nothing like unto him. 42. Levadas. The 500th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, say, call upon those whom you claim to be gods apart from him, and they have no power to remove harm from you, nor to transfer it. 1756. The 501st chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, say, call upon God, or call upon the most gracious. 17110. Call upon him, being sincere in your faith to him. 729. The 502nd chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, betray not God and the apostle, and do not knowingly betray your trusts. T7. The 503rd chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and they were not commanded but to worship God, sincere in faith to him alone, turning away from all that is false. 98. The 504th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, say, God, then leave them to play in their vain discourse. 6. Checker. The 505th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and wait patiently for the judgment of thy sustainer, for verily thou art under our eyes. 52. The 506th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and they schemed, and God schemed, and God is the best of schemers. 3. The 507th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, does he not know that God sees? 96:14. The 508th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, God is the light of the heavens and the earth. 24:35. God brings them forth from darkness into the light. 2.257. Part 2 of the Meccan openings. The 509th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and whatever you spend of anything, he replaces it, and he is the best of providers. 34:39. The 510th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, I will turn away from my messengers those who behave arrogantly on earth without right. 7:46. The 511th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and be conscious of God, and God teaches you. 2. A2. If you are conscious of God, he will grant you a criterion. 8:29. The 512th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, as often as their skins are wholly burned, we shall replace them with other skins, that they may taste the suffering. The 513th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, a mention of thy Sustainer's grace bestowed upon his servant Zachariah, when he called out to his Sustainer with a voice low and secret. 19:2-3. The 514th chapter, on the knowledge of the state of a pole whose abode was, and whoever places his trust in God, he is sufficient for him. 65. The 515th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, and we thought that we had but been trying him. So he asked his Sustainer to forgive him his sin, and fell down in prostration, and turned unto him in repentance. The 38. And he turned again unto him. The 516th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, say, if your fathers and your sons and your brethren and your spouses and your clan, and the worldly goods which you have acquired, and the commerce whereof you fear a decline, and the dwellings in which you take pleasure are dearer to you than God and his apostle, and the struggle in his cause. Then wait until God makes manifest his will. 9:24 Unto God. The 517th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, till the earth, vast as it is, became too narrow for them, and their souls became too narrow for them, and they became certain that there is no refuge from God save with him. 9:118 Unto him. The 518th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, until, when the terror is lifted from their hearts, they will ask one another, What has your sustainer said? They will answer, The truth, and he is the high, the great. 34. The 519th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, respond to the call of God and the apostle whenever he calls you unto that which will give you life, and know that God intervenes between man and the desires of his heart, and that unto him you shall be gathered. The 520th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, only they listen who respond. 6. The 521st chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, and take provision for the journey, but the best of provisions is God consciousness. 2:197. The 522nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, and those who give what they give, while their hearts tremble with awe that they must return to their sustainer. It is they who vie with one another in doing good works, and it is they who outrun others in attaining them. 23:60-61, and they are foremost in them. The 523rd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, and as for him who feared the station of his sustainer, 79:40. The 524th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, say, if the sea were ink for the words of my sustainer, the sea would surely run dry before the words of my sustainer run dry, even if we brought the like thereof to add to it. 18:109 as aid. The 525th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, and whosoever transgresses the bounds of God, it is he who has wronged his own soul. Thou knowest not. It may be that God will bring something new to pass hereafter. XXV 164. The 526th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, and had we not made thee firm, thou mightest have inclined to them a little. In that case we would indeed have made thee taste double punishment in life and double punishment after death. 17:74-75. The 527th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, and keep thy soul content with those who call on their sustainer morning and evening, seeking his face. And let not thine eyes pass beyond them, seeking the pomp of this world's life, and pay no heed to him whose heart we have rendered neglectful of our remembrance, and who follows his own desires, and whose case has gone beyond all bounds. And say, the truth is from your sustainer. Let him then who wills believe, and let him who wills reject it. 18:28-29. The 528th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole, whose spiritual station was, and the recompense of an evil is an evil like thereof. 42:40. The 529th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, as for the good land, its vegetation comes forth in abundance by its sustainer's leave, whereas from the bad it comes forth but poorly. 758. The 530th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, they seek to hide from men, but they cannot hide from God. For he is with them when they plot by night, in words that he cannot approve. The 531st chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, and in whatever condition thou mayest be, and whatever discourse of this divine writ thou mayst be reciting, and whatever work you all, O men, may do, we are your witness when you enter upon it. 10:16. The 532nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, verily, for all believers, prayer is indeed a sacred duty linked to particular times of day. 4th Qur'an. The 533rd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was. And if my servants ask thee about me, behold, I am near. I respond to the call of him who calls whenever he calls unto me. Let them then respond unto me too. 86. The 534th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, and behold, thou art indeed of a tremendous nature. 68. The 535th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, those who remember God when standing and sitting and lying on their sides. 3:19-1. The 536th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, to him who desires a harvest in the life to come, we shall grant an increase in his harvest. And to him who desires a harvest in this world, we shall give him thereof, but he will have no share in the life to come. Frezi nas to setenetos. Tantusi. The 537th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, and thou standest in awe of men, whereas it is God alone of whom thou shouldst stand in awe. 33:37. The 538th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, pursue then the right course as thou hast been bidden by God, together with all who with thee have turned unto him, and do not overstep the bounds. Verily he sees all that you do. 11 Psalm. The 539th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, so flee unto God. Verily I am a plain warner unto you from him. And do not set up any other deity side by side with God. Verily I am a plain warner unto you from him. 51:50-51. The 540th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, and even if they are patient until thou goest out to them, it would be better for them. 49. The 541st chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, and whoever does wrong, we shall cause him to taste great suffering. 25:19. The 542nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, and whoever is blind in this world, he will be blind in the life to come, and still further astray from the path. 1772. The 543rd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, and whatever the Apostle gives you, accept it, and whatever he forbids you, avoid it. 59d7. The 544th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, not a word does he utter, but there is a watcher by him, ready to note it. 5018. The 545th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, but prostrate thyself and draw near unto God. Chantucine 96. It's each to between. The 546th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, so turn away from him who turns his back on our remembrance. Of 53, 29. The 547th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, therefore proclaim openly all that thou art commanded, and turn away from those who ascribe divinity to aught beside God. 15. The 548th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, so remember me, and I shall remember you. 2. The 549th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, but as for him who thinks himself self-sufficient, to him art thou all attention. 85:6. The 550th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, and when his sustainer revealed his glory to the mountain, he made it crumble to dust, and Moses fell down in a swoon. 7:43. The 551st chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, and God will see your deeds, and so will his apostle. 9:105. The 552nd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, and even though, when they had wronged themselves, they had but come unto thee and asked God to forgive them, and the apostle had asked forgiveness for them. 4:6. They would have found God an acceptor of repentance, a dispenser of grace. The 553rd chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a Pole whose spiritual station was, and God encompasses them from behind. 85:20. The 554th chapter, concerning the attribute of the person who is transferred to the meaning of the seal of prophethood, and his secret is like the button of the partridge in its meaning, and his station is. And think not of those who exult in what they have thus contrived, and who love to be praised for what they have not done. Think not that they are in safety from suffering, for grievous suffering awaits them. The 555th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the reason that prevented me from mentioning the remainder of the poles of our time up to the day of resurrection. The 556th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the state of a pole whose spiritual station was, hallowed be he in whose hand all dominion rests. 67. The one in whose hand is dominion. The 557th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the seal of the saints in an absolute sense. The 558th chapter, concerning the knowledge of the names belonging to the Lord of glory, which may not be applied to the utterance, and what is impermissible. The 559th chapter, concerning the knowledge of secrets and truths regarding various spiritual stations, and this chapter is like an abridgment of the chapters of this book. Every chapter is contained within our saying, and to it belong an increase of 3 or 4. The 560th chapter, concerning a prescriptive will of divine law, by which the aspirant and the one who has arrived may benefit. And this is the end of the chapters of this book.